All right, my awesome friends, I'm here with a student privately, just going through an assignment that was given in college. And part of my frustration is no one ever tells you why you need to do what you need to do in Microsoft Project. They just tell you to do it. Like really, really ridiculous stuff. As some of you know, the PMP exam used to be very heavily centered around the critical path and scheduling and all this stuff. So here we are in Microsoft Project. And the professor says, show the fields, which I'm going to insert. And the fields are, oh dear, early start and early finish. My goodness, some of you are probably cringing because you know that this stuff is not even on the exam anymore. And who in their right mind, when using them as project, ever goes into these? You know what I mean? Let's keep it real. Let's keep it 100. So let's put in the late start as well. So this is just a schedule that I created with a template. Okay, let's put in the late finish. So you've got these fields, and all these mean, this just means this is the earliest time you can start, and this is the earliest time you can finish based on the information you have here. Microsoft Project is intelligent enough to know, based on the information you have here, this is the earliest time you can start, this is the earliest time you can finish, this is the latest time you can start, and this is the latest time you can finish. Now someone says, all right, that's all well and good, Phil, but how do they get there? So let's go back in a little time machine to the very beginning of scheduling. So for those of you that are not aware, when you schedule, it's actually based on a WBS. And the WBS, as you see in this image, has higher levels of work, higher aggregates of work. Well, those aggregates of work are broken down into the tasks that you see. So to make it very clear, this is all WBS, work breakdown structure. The work breakdown structure is a totally different nomenclature than a schedule. The idea is that you go down to the lowest level of the WBS, the work package, and you break those open into tasks. And that's what we have here. Now, these tasks need to be scheduled, and they need to be scheduled with a consciousness of relationship types. And here comes the relationship types you see in Microsoft Project. Finish to start means you must finish A before you start B. Start to start means you could schedule with a start A and then I can start B. In other words, they could start almost simultaneously. The moment A starts, B can start. But B starting is contingent on A starting. We also have finish to finish. B's finish is contingent on A's finishing. If A doesn't finish, then B cannot finish. And then we have start to finish, which means B cannot finish except A has started. An example will be night guard B cannot finish until day guard A shows up. So the finish of B is governed by the start of A. Finish of B governed by start of A. And those are the relationship types we take and put into Microsoft Project. Something else we do in Microsoft Project is use the concept of lead time. Lead time just means we start an activity earlier than it needs to. For example, we have prepare dinner, set table. We could have a finish to start relationship, as you can see, but we're putting in some lead time. And that means the start of set table is accelerated. So halfway into preparing dinner, you can start setting the table. You don't need to wait until the dinner is totally done, right? And we call that lead time. That's another feature we use in Microsoft Project. Another feature we use is lag time. An example of this is building a foundation. You don't just begin building on that foundation. You got to attach a cap to the foundation. But before you attach a cap to the foundation, you got to allow 7 days for the concrete to cure. And that's an example of lag time because it's not a task. It's just dead time you need to put in the schedule for the concrete to cure. Another thing you should think about when you're scheduling is dependencies. We have mandatory dependencies, things that are mandatory, like in the construction example I just showed you. And then we have discretionary dependencies, which are based on your preference. For example, you could choose to do plumbing first and then electrical, or you could choose to do electrical first and plumbing. They're not mandatory dependencies. Then we have external dependencies, things that you wait for from outside. You must get vendors sub-deliverable before you move forward. That's an external dependency. But if you're dependent on something from within the project, then it's an internal dependency. Moving forward, here comes the topic of critical path and scheduling Microsoft Project. So imagine you're working on a project, you had analysis and design. Analysis is 6 days, design is 8 days. Now you probably say, oh, that's a 14-day project. True. But going a step further to understand those first parameters I showed you, we actually have a concept called a forward pass. And I'm going to show you what a forward pass is. A forward pass involves finding out the early start, the earliest time a task can start, and the early finish, the earliest time a task can finish. These are going to be in the top two boxes here. So assuming we're starting a project, typically we would say that's the first day. But there's a method to doing this called the zero method. And in the zero method, you start off on day zero. So if you're starting off on day zero, and this task is 6 days, you just add the 6 to the 0, and the earliest time you can finish is going to be 6. For the next task, we also have the early start and the early finish. The earliest time we can start this task in the world of the zero method is going to be taking this number and just putting it straight into this box. So again, it's going to be 6 for the early start of the design task. It's 8 days, so we add an 8 to the 6, and then we get 14. And that's how the numbers are computed for an early start and early finish. Then we have something we call a backward pass. And for the backward pass, we drop the 14 at the end of the chain down there, and then we subtract the 8 to give us 6. We move the 6 back the same way we did in the forward pass. We move the 6 here in the backward pass, and we put the 6 here, and 6 minus 6 is 0. And we just did a forward pass and backward pass. And for my friend, my student I'm working with right now, her schedule is exactly early start, early finish is the same as the bottom, which is the late start and the late finish. It's chock-a-block. But that is not surprising because a lot of projects in the real world, they have zero slack. What do I mean by zero slack? Well, there's something called total slack. So let's play around with total slack here. Total slack is just late start minus early start, or late finish minus early finish. That's how Microsoft Project computes those things. So it's late start minus early start, or late finish minus early finish. And if you do that, you get the slack. So in this case, for task A, the total slack is 6 minus 6, or 0 minus 0, which is 0. And that just means you have no wiggle room. You do the same for task D, the design task. It's 14 minus 14, which is equal to 0. And this is task D, total slack. There are different types of slack, though. Total slack is how much time can I delay an activity without affecting the project's end date. But we also have free slack, and free slack is a difference between these two numbers. Again, it's 0, which means how much time can I delay task A without affecting task B, right? Without delaying the start of task B. And the answer is 0. You got no wiggle room. That's really what it means. Now, I could go a step further and I could include more tasks. And we could do a forward pass and a backward pass, and I could do it for 3 tasks, I could do it for 4 tasks. You know, I could go on and on, but ultimately, for a more complex problem, you would have this arrangement, right? And we've got different tasks, which is a bigger network. We got 4, 5, 6, 7 tasks. And then we begin to move forward in this forward pass arrangement. And then we do the backward pass arrangement, and we're going to come up with all these numbers you're seeing here. But I want to show you where there could be a difference. In instances where there's a difference between the late finish and the early finish for a task, 9 minus 8 is 1. So there's a slack of 1 in activity D. Here's another example right here. There's a slack of 11. So that means I could delay task F by 11 days without messing up the project. And you can see that because the early finish of F is 4, And then the next task that is happening is on day 15. So the idea is that you've got 11 days of wiggle room between task F and task G. But every task has its own unique slack. So the free slack of F is 11, but the free slack of E, how much time I can delay E without affecting G, is 1, because the difference between 14 and 15 is 1. So I can delay F by 11 days, but I can only delay task E by 1 day. And as far as task C, I cannot even delay task C at all because that will throw it off. All right, now all of those calculations that sound so complicated, they are all done by Microsoft Project. That's why I was kind of joking in the beginning, who in their right mind wants to do this for all the tasks? You don't have to. So if we put in total slack, you can see we've got some slack in some instances, and in others we've got 0. But to be quite honest with you, as you're managing the schedule, this is something that you inherently know. So very few of you would have ever displayed this. I can guarantee you haven't ever thought of this. Talk less of the slack, because you're meant to be proactively managing the schedule, right? And remember, under each one of these, there's so many subtasks that imagine having a 200-line schedule, or in schedules I've worked on, 20,000 lines. Who's got time to going through 20,000 lines looking for slack? No, there are other ways that you could sensibly sift through your schedule and see where things are in danger. And what I mean by that is you could do it incrementally. You could do it as you go along. It doesn't have to be something that you do right off the bat for everything. It's not very helpful. You can click on the critical tasks option, and that will show you if you have any tasks that are non-critical. And if you have tasks that are non-critical, then you're likely to have, as you can see here, these are non-critical, they're blue. Those that are critical, they're red. So if your schedule is just full of red, that means you got very little slack, right? You got very little float or slack in there, but that's okay. It is what it is. I encourage people to not artificially put slack in there. You can see these have got a whole bunch of slack, these blue ones, see? And if we were to reveal it, you can see these ones with the total slack, these blue ones, they have more slack, they have some slack, but the red ones, they have 0. So with all the red, as soon as you say critical, it changes into that mode, and you can see those that have some slack. What the critical path is, it's really the longest path in a network diagram, and it shows you the longest time, but it shows you the longest path, but the shortest time in which you can complete the project. So to round this up, you go back here and we take a look at the critical path in my example here. The critical path is A, B, C, G, like this, just like that. That's the critical path. So you have a couple of paths here that are non-critical. This is non-critical. So there's wiggle room in this path. On the critical path, there's no wiggle room. This one has, I can see at least 1 day, right, as being the wiggle room. In this one, I can see 11 days as being the wiggle room. So the critical path is that path that has 0 total float, 0 free float. You cannot move anything. It's chock-a-block, and that's okay. Okay. So for those of you in college doing this Microsoft Project stuff, and you get these goofy questions that tell you to do all this stuff without giving you background, I'm hoping that some of what I shared with you here today will help you to be able to navigate and do what you're being asked. If you got any questions, put them in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to answer. All right. Thank you very much, and talk to you soon.